since a lot of Filipinos have yet to receive their third shot.
You have waning immunity 6 months, 6 to 8 months after your last dose. So yun lang po, we're protecting them more because they will be more at risk of adverse or hospitalization and death.
Infectious disease expert Dr. Edsel Salvania is confident that there will not be another surge of COVID patients in the country's hospitals.
Kung wala kang bakuna at mahawa ka ng Omicron, mataas pa rin ang risk mo na mamatay at magkaroon ng severe disease. So Omicron is not the beginning of the end. It's the vaccine that are the beginning of the end that continue to protect us from Omicron.
The Octa Research Group sees a possible uptick in COVID-19 cases anytime now. Despite the projected surge, Octa is not recommending another lockdown as cases would likely be more manageable.
There's a very big possibility of cases going up. Kaya ang panawagan namin, gaya ng panawagan ng lahat ng nagsalita before us, mag-vax to the max na tayo, kung hindi pa tayo na-booster, magpa-booster tayo kasi inevitable ho na tataas ang cases natin dahil lalo na bukas na ekonomiya.
The Department of Health has started giving the second COVID-19 booster shot as the department is reporting a slow rise of new infections. More than 500,000 Filipinos are still vulnerable to infection. Will the booster shots increase further protection and immunity? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our special guests and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao. Also with us online is Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star from the port area in Manila. Ami, happy Tuesday, and what's your top story today?
Good evening. Kakatakot naman yung introduction ng show natin, ano? Pero yung iba yata natatakot naman ngayon dahil wala nang obstacle sa implementation ng Anti-Terror Act. So yun, tinitingnan natin kung paano maging ang full implementation nun.
So the Supreme Court in effect rejected the MR, the motion for reconsideration of the petitioners.
Yes. And considering na may mga grupo na tinag ng fronts ng terrorist organization, so we will see what happens in the coming weeks.
Yeah, okay. And well, still on that, in the coming weeks, in the coming 2 weeks, 13 days from now, Filipinos are going out to vote, casting their vote in 2022 elections. So there's a lot to look forward to and a lot to hope for. And for that, tonight we bring with us Attorney Ruben Carranza, a senior expert of programs of the International Center for Transitional Justice. Attorney Carranza, of course, was also a commissioner of the Presidential Commission on Good Government, who was also responsible for recovery of a huge part of the ill-gotten wealth of the Marcoses. Attorney Carranza, thank you for joining us and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Salamat din. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir, thank you for joining us all the way in New York. And good morning to you.
Good
Well, sir,
evening naman sa inyo.
yes, sir. Sir, well, let me start off first with the premises. I'm not even sure if I should call this a premise because it's already fact. You've had already so many Supreme Court decisions stating that Ferdinand Marcos Sr. had ill-gotten wealth. You have GR 152, 154, among other things, yung sa Swiss bank accounts and all that. So that's a given na. There is ill-gotten wealth and all that. But however, my question to you is this: the constant refrain that we've been getting, and I've also noticed that you've been addressing this in your posts, is that the sins of the father are not the sins of the son. And I've noticed that also in your post that you've been addressing that. Tell us exactly from your information, from what you know, and from your investigations in the PCGG, what role or how much does Ferdinand Marcos Jr. know about what was happening then, as far as these cases were concerned?
Well, the sins of the father, of Ferdinand Marcos Sr., are different from the sins of the son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., but they have both committed sins. Ang tatay ang may pakana ng pagnanakaw at yung unang-unang mga attempt at hiding yung ill-gotten wealth na ninakaw nilang dalawa ni Imelda Marcos. Kaya sabi ng Supreme Court noong 2003, at ito malinaw dun sa sinabi mong kaso, Ed, yung pera na nasa Switzerland, yung nabawi namin na $680 million, sabi ng Supreme Court, ay perang ninakaw ng mag-asawang Marcos mula sa Republika ng Pilipinas. So malinaw na sinabi ng Supreme Court. Yun ang mga kasalanan ng namatay na Marcos Sr. at ni Imelda Marcos. Pero si Marcos Jr. kasabwat sa pagtago at paggastos at muling pagtago ng mga natitirang ninakaw ng mag-asawang Marcos. Those are the sins of the son. Kasama dyan yung una niyang attempt, una niyang pagsubok sa pagtago at pag-withdraw galing sa mga Swiss banks nung hindi pa ito na-freeze ng Switzerland. Kakalapag lang nila sa Hawaii, mga ilang linggo pa lang, sumubok si Marcos Jr. Na mag-withdraw nung hindi pa mga frozen na bank accounts nila sa Switzerland. At yung pagtawag niya doon sa isang Swiss banker na habang nasa Hawaii si Marcos Jr., yun tuloy ang nag-trigger isa sa mga nag-trigger sa pag-freeze ng Switzerland sa mga account nila. Isa pa lang yan sa mga ginawa ni Marcos Jr. Over the years, no, sa loob ng ilang taon na naglilitis kami laban sa mga Marcos nung nasa PCGG ako at even before that and after that, si Marcos Jr. din ang tumututo, no, lumalaban sa mga kaso na file, hindi lang sa Pilipinas kundi pati sa Amerika. Si Marcos Jr. din ang naghahanap ng paraan na patagalin ang mga kasong ito. Ginawa niya ito sa Supreme Court sa Pilipinas, ginawa niya rin ito sa Amerika. Pinapatagal ni Marcos Jr. yung mga kaso para baka sakaling magkaroon ng isang pangulo na kaalyado niya o gayon, yun ang ginagawa niya, baka sakaling pwede siyang tumakbo bilang pangulo at matapos yung mga paghahabol sa kanya. So, yun ang kasalanan ni Marcos Jr. Ang tawag dyan, complicity after the fact. Sa ilalim ng batas ng Pilipinas, pwede pa rin kasama siya sa mga nagtatago ng nakaw na yaman.
Pero sir, I suppose the logical question that comes up next is there any liability here? And if there is any liability here because of that, bakit ho hindi siya nasampahan ng kaso?
Lagi kong nakikita ng mga comment minsan sa sinasabi mo nga ito, yung mga post. Hindi lang in relation to what I say on social media or on interviews like this, na bakit ngayon lang. Yun rin yung sinabi ni Amy Marcos, kapatid ni Bongbong, tungkol dun sa paghahabol sa kanila sa pagbayad ng estate tax nung namatay na tatay nila. Bakit ngayon lang? Hindi naman totoong bakit ngayon lang. Sila yung bakit hanggang ngayon. Bakit hanggang ngayon ayaw nilang bayaran yung tax? Bakit hanggang ngayon tinututulan nila yung pagsunod dun sa utos ng Supreme Court noong 2003 na ibalik yung mga ninakaw nila. So, ang isa sa mga kaso na matagal ko nang sinabi na dapat gawin sana ng pamahalaan, wala na ako sa pamahalaan, so hindi ko basta-basta magagawa ito, ay ang pag-file ng money laundering case laban sa mga Marcos, laban kay Imelda Marcos, laban kay Amy Marcos, kay Bongbong, maski siguro si Amy at yung kanilang mga asawa kung mapatunayan at maimbestigahan na may kinalaman sila sa money laundering. Yung money laundering law kasi 2012 na naipasa sa Pilipinas. Wala pang money laundering law nung nasa PCGG ako, 2002 pala, no? Nung nasa PCGG ako, kakatayo lang siguro ng Anti-Money Laundering Council, hindi pa buo, hindi pa planchado yung regulasyon niya. Pero isa yan sa mga pwedeng isang pangkaso kay Marcos Jr.
Sino ngayon ang pwedeng mag-initiate ng money laundering? Kahit sinong taxpayer, pwede?
Sa pagkakaalam ko kasi sa batas na anti-money laundering regulation sa Pilipinas, ang Anti-Money Laundering Council na pinamumunuan ng governor ng Central Bank ang nagpapalabas ng tinatawag na red flags na sinasabi nila doon sa mga bangko at iba pang mga financial institutions na bantayan yung mga pagpasok at paglabas ng pera na dumadaan sa mga bangko, pawn shops, iba-ibang mga institutions. So ang dapat manguna sa pagsisimula ng pag-imbestiga ng money laundering na ginagawa ng mga Marcos, ang Anti-Money Laundering Council, ang Central Bank. Alam naman na ang inuuna kasi nila yung mga casino, yung terrorist financing, and those are all legitimate concerns involving money laundering. But this one is staring them in the face, and the law already states that corruption, money earned from corruption, is a predicate offense. Ibig sabihin, meron ka ng basihan para magbukas ng investigasyon tungkol sa money laundering.
So hindi kailangan ng complainant, pwedeng ang central bank, motu proprio, the Bangko Central head, motu proprio, mag-i-initiate nga nung ganong move to investigate for money laundering. Hindi kailangan ng complainant.
Hindi kailangan. And ito pa, Amy, ito pang mas mahalaga. Yung mga bangko mismo, I hope our journalists, Filipino journalists, and even non-Filipino journalists, if they ever have an opportunity, can actually ask Ferdinand Marcos Jr. what banks in the Philippines he has accounts in. Because those banks are supposed to flag any transactions that might appear suspicious. And in this case, I will say, almost all of the transactions of the Marcos family should be flagged for being suspicious.
Well, sir, let me follow up Ami's question. Kasi, of course, it's important that that government regulators investigate or file cases if necessary as far as money laundering is concerned. Pero on the other hand, kasi, if government does not act or government officials do not act for any political reason, may recourse ba ang publiko? Does the ordinary Juan de la Cruz, does he have the authority, does he have the right to file a case, to move, if only to move it forward?
Certainly. Ang isa pang pwedeng gawin, and of course this is the broader remedy, na pwedeng pwedeng sumulat ang mamamayan or ordinary citizens doon sa Anti-Money Laundering Council for them to act on the potential money laundering offenses committed by Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and his family. At kapag hindi ito inaktuhan, ang isa pang connected na remedy na pwedeng gawin ng mga mamamayan na concerned dyan sa money laundering is to go to the ombudsman to ask the Ombudsman to compel the Anti-Money Laundering Council, which is a state institution, to act on their letter, on their demand for an investigation.
Actually, sir, I think I mentioned to you before. If you look at the declared assets of the family members, for example, si Imelda Marcos in 2018 declared a salad of 920 million pesos. And even at that time, until now, wala pa siyang minamana from the Marcos estate. So that does raise the question where the money came from, and could that possibly be grounds for an investigation?
Of course, and it's very basic math. Yung Supreme Court decision of 2003 says that the Marcos spouses, now the Marcos estate and Imelda Marcos, only have legitimate assets of up to $304,000 US.
Yeah, that's 16 million pesos more or less.
Ibig sabihin, yes, anything above that is ill-gotten, sabi ng Supreme Court. So, yung mga araw-araw na pinapakita ni Imelda na kayamanan niya, na nakaw na yaman pala, the fact that she has them in her possession can constitute a basis for a money laundering investigation. Idadagdag ko pa, Ed and Amy, ang isa pang pwedeng gawin ng Estado, ng pamahalaan, ay ang pagtanong sa mga bangko gamit yung National Internal Revenue Code. No? Alam natin yung tax liability for estate tax non-payment ng mga Marcos, mataas na, no? Nagsimula at 23 billion, yun yung main liability. Yeah. Under the Revenue Code, pwedeng hingin ng BIR Commissioner, pwedeng tanungin ng BIR Commissioner ang mga bangko kung ano yung mga transaction na nangyari doon sa mga bank accounts ni Ferdinand Marcos Sr., the estate of Marcos Sr. itself. No? Kasama yan sa kapangyarihan ng BIR Commissioner at isa yan sa mga exceptions sa bank secrecy law.
Of course, ang problema ngayon sa nakikita natin, kung accurate yung mga surveys, baka ang maging head ng gobyerno natin by noon of June 30 si Ferdinand Marcos mismo. Ano ngayon ang magiging impact nun sa mga initiatives to investigate him for money laundering? Immune ba yung presidente sa investigation for money laundering? Kasi yung iba sinasabi, pwede ka mag-investigate. Yang ganyan, pwede ka pa rin mag-initiate ng investigation. Is that correct?
Well, any president who already assumes office, of course, may immunity from suit while he is in office. And that immunity applies to certain more, a very long, broad line of offenses, Amy. Pero under the Constitution, under the same Constitution, mayroong impeachable offenses. No? And betrayal of the public trust is one of the broadest grounds for impeachment. And if there is enough basis to show that even prior to becoming president, if and when he gets elected, for example, Marcos Jr. continues to commit offenses that might constitute money laundering, he immediately opens himself up to impeachment. Now, sa akin kasi hindi naman kailangang hintayin yan. Hindi kailangang hintayin maging presidente o ano man yung resulta ng eleksyon sa Mayo. Ang kailangan gawin, simulan yung pag-iimbestiga, hindi naman nadadaan sa survey ang pagiging inosente sa money laundering. Hindi naman sa taas ng ranking mo sa survey may ipapakita na hindi ka nagnakaw mula sa kaban ng bayan. So these surveys are irrelevant as far as the power of the state, the power of the Money Laundering Council, the power of the Bureau of Internal Revenue to initiate investigations for money laundering, to ask banks to submit information on the transactions of the Marcos family involving the assets of the Marcos estate.
Pero sir, anyway, you mentioned already the possibility of impeachment complaints and so on down the line. Pero of course, impeachment is a very political act, which in large part depends as well on whether a sitting president has the support of Congress, which in turn is an institution that relies on public popularity. So, given the numbers now that we're seeing, mukhang medyo malabonik din po 'yun.
Well, meron tayong halimbawa na diyan, no? May karanasan ng Pilipinas. Nasa Pilipinas pa ako doon nangyari ito. Joseph Estrada was a very popular president. and yet he was impeached. And he was impeached precisely because of the corruption he committed. And he was convicted. It takes political will. No? It takes, of course, people of integrity, people who are trusted, an ombudsman who is respected to carry that out. Now, aside from yung domestic na remedies no, against corruption and against money laundering involving corruption, meron ding mga remedies outside of the Philippines that might not necessarily have an impact on prosecution in the country, in the Philippines, in Philippine courts, but will have an impact on whoever becomes president of the Philippines and what that president can do as far as foreign relations is concerned. No? Merong tinatawag na Magnitsky Act. Nagsimula sa Estados Unidos, pero nagkaroon na rin ng Magnitsky Act sa European Union, sa Canada, at sa United Kingdom. At sa ilalim ng mga Magnitsky Act na yan, sa iba't ibang bansang nabanggit ko, pwedeng pakawan ng sanctions ang isang pangulo, ang isang political leader, at yung kanyang mga pamilya at mga aliado kapag merong basihan na kasabwat sila sa korupsyon, kasabwat sila sa human rights violations. Hindi kailangan na mayroong conviction sa bansa nila dahil may kapangyarihan sila sa bansa nila. So baka hindi pwedeng doon kumuha ng remedy sa bansa nila. At yung Magnitsky sanctions, kasama dyan ang travel ban, ang freeze sa mga assets sila, and potentially even prosecution in a foreign country.
Sir,
Covered na yung
go ahead.
mga kamag-anak. Covered yung mga kamag-anak din.
Kasama yung mga kamag-anak ini dahil yung Magnitsky Act, it's very broad no, na kinikilala niya na halimbawa kung may corruption, hindi lang naman yung nasa poder mismo, yung elected public official or yung appointed public official ang pwedeng magtago ng nakaw na yaman, pati mga asawa, pati mga anak, pati mga assistant, pwedeng patawan ng sanctions sa ilalim ng itong mga Magnitsky Act legislation.
Sir, before I let you go, I'll squeeze in one more question. If you could address this question that keeps cropping up on social media. I'm sure you've come across this as well. You will always see a thread that goes na it's never been proven that the Marcos wealth came from public coffers. Only that it is on unexplained origin. Which is why the 152, 154 decided on forfeiture. In which case daw, this opens up the possibility that Marcos was wealthy to begin with. I'm sure you've come across this. How do you address that issue? Now, the question of whether or not this came from public coffers.
Well, there are three ways to address that, Ed. No? Yung pinakamadali, of course, is to say that, in fact, the Supreme Court addressed that itself by saying that the money deposited by the Marcos spouses in Switzerland is money stolen by the Marcos spouses from the Republic of the Philippines. No? Hindi naman pwedeng yung mga nasa social media ang Supreme Court of the Philippines. Hindi naman pwedeng yung mga abogado sa Facebook ang nagbibigay ng opinion, because in the Philippines, it's the Supreme Court, whether we like its decisions or not. And I have many disagreements with some of the Supreme Court decisions involving the Marcoses. It's the Supreme Court itself that has said that the money we recovered was stolen. No? Ang pangalawa pang punto na sagot dyan, kasi kasama dyan yung sinasabi mo na mayaman na si Marcos bago siya naging presidente. But ang mga tax return na final ni Imelda at ni Ferdinand Marcos, nagpapakita na hindi sila mayaman. Galing na sa kanila mismo. No? Sila mismo yung nagsabi na ito lang ang ari-arian namin. Walang ginto, Talyano man o hindi, walang Yamashita gold. Walang ari-arian na pwede silang magdeposito ng ganun kalaki sa Switzerland. Pero ang pangatlo at tingin ko hindi masyadong napupunan na dahilan, no? Pagsagot diyan sa tanong, bakit ang batas na yan, Republic Act 1379, 1955 pa yan, hindi pa presidente si Marcos, congressman si Marcos. Ang sponsor ng batas na yan, isa sa mga sponsor na yan, si Congressman Ferdinand Marcos. Siya mismo, si Marcos mismo nagsabi na patunay ito na may korupsyon at kailangan natin gamitin ito kung sakaling hindi natin makasuhan ng kasong kriminal ang isang nagnakaw sa kaban ng bayan, sabi ni Ferdinand Marcos Sr., nung congressman pa siya, pwede natin siyang kasuhan ng forfeiture dahil mas effective ito na paraan sa pag-recover ng ninakaw na yaman kahit hindi man natin makuhang makonvict ang nagnakaw. Posible kasing hindi makuhang makonvict ang nagnakaw dahil patay na siya, katulad ni Congressman Ferdinand Marcos Sr., sponsor ng forfeiture law.
Well, let me just add to that. In December 1965, the Marcos couple declared assets of only 120,000 pesos. That's in GR 152-154 of 2003. So yun, maraming salamat po. Former PCGG Commissioner Ruben Carranza, live from New York. Maraming salamat for joining us tonight.
Salamat din.
Ingat po. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back to the Chiefs on One News, and now joining us, Octa Research Fellow Professor Guido David and Dr. Ronjin Solante, infectious disease expert and a member of the DOH Vaccine Expert Panel. Sirs, Doc, and Professor, and Doctor also, magandang gabi and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Ami and Ed.
Hello po.
And Dr. Solante.
And dalawa lang kami ngayon eh. Tinakasan kami ng dalawang iba eh. Sir, well, let me start off with this. Kasi we're seeing significant increases of COVID activity in India, US, and South Africa. Sabi nga ni Dr. David in one of the fora that he attended. And there's been a warning na we might see a surge in May or June this year. I'm wondering lang po, is this a concern that we have or is this a certainty? In other words, is this inevitable na pag meron ng subvariants na kumakalat sa ibang bansa, sooner or later, are we going to get it and are we going to get it big? Just to lay down expectations po. Who would want to start? Doc, kayo po. Doc Ronjin.
Okay, yes. So based on our experience before, with other variants of concern, even with the strict border control, and even in those days, we really have strict testing. It was inevitable, no? And I would say, really, it will be inevitable. Now, the scenario now is that we're better compared before. Why? A lot of us are vaccinated.
Yeah.
But what's the concern now is the waning immunity.
Yeah.
Now, the prediction of March, April, May, June is based on most of those population that were vaccinated or received the primary vaccine series, November, December. There is really significant waning of that immunity, and that will be an important factor, increase in the cases and transmission.
So, sir, Doc, before I move to Professor, when you say inevitable po makapasok dito. But I'm wondering po kung if it's inevitable, is it safe to say it's inevitable that we will have a surge, or new surge this year?
Well, quite difficult to say if we'll have there is high certainty that we may have that possible surge because of the explanation I mentioned, Ed.
Okay, not good news. Dr. David.
Well,
Mathematically, yung projection ng Octa, you've been fairly accurate in your projections. Ano yung nakikita nyo sa ngayon? Because you have noted a slight increase, actually a worrisome increase in cases. Ano ba yung nakikita ninyo ngayon exactly?
well, Ed and Ami, sa ganitong situation, usually nga bine-benchmark natin yung nangyayari sa Philippines with what happens in some countries na medyo similar yung characteristics. In this case, yung mga binabantayan namin, India, Indonesia, and South Africa, among a few. Kasi let's say, kunyari, nag-surge sa China, it doesn't mean, or sa South Korea, it doesn't mean na we'll have a similar surge. Kasi sila, they're just having the Omicron surge sa ngayon. So, hindi naman siya comparable. Pero, pag nagkakaroon ng increase ngayon sa South Africa, and may na-detect na bagong subvariant dun, the BA4 and BA5. Tapos sa India, meron din bagong subvariant, yung Omicron BA 2.12, it's a concern kasi tapos na sila sa Omicron and this is a subvariant of Omicron pero somewhat similar, I mean generally similar. Tapos nagkakaroon ng increase in cases. And also yung timeline nila, the increase is happening about 3 to 4 months after their initial surge. So ibig sabihin, may factor talaga dito yung waning immunity na sabi ni Dr. Solante. So the waning immunity is a factor. The new subvariants is a factor, and of course, we also have to deal with yung complacency sa health protocols. But given that these are happening now in South Africa, hindi ko masasabi siguro 100% certain that it will happen. It could be preventable, pero it seems very likely at this time that we'll have some kind of surge. Tinitingnan ko ngayon sa South Africa. The increase is not as bad as nung Omicron surge nila last year in terms of yung reproduction number. Right now, they nag-increase na to 2 yung reproduction number nila. So if we have a similar type of surge dito sa Philippines, if we have a reproduction number increase to 2, it won't be as bad as the Omicron wave. Baka mas mababa siya. It could be similar to the Delta wave or the Alpha Beta wave. And that's because we have a significant number of vaccinations, tulad nga sabi ni Dr. Salate. But maybe if we could add to the vaccinations pa and to the boosters, we might be able to control the number of cases even further.
On the other hand, Doctor, kahit mild yung papasok, well, Omicron is mild, but you are talking about waning immunity. How bad can it be kapag halimbawa pumasok yung BA4 na yan dito? Kasi some scientists are saying, yung mga yung mga current vaccines are designed, formulated for the Wuhan virus. They're not actually formulated for these emerging mutations. So yun ang tinatanong ng mga tao ngayon, ayaw na nila mag-mask, mababa na yung uptake ng booster. How bad can it be?
Well, well, let's take this first. No, the current first generation vaccines, tama ka, no, these are not really virus blocking. No, the ability of this vaccine, especially with this Omicron and with these new variants or sublineages, no, nakikita talaga yan doon sa UK data na after 20 weeks talagang bagsak ang vaccine effectiveness with Omicron, like 20%, no, because that's how the mutations with Omicron, it evades the antibody with this first generation vaccines. But we're so confident that even if the vaccine effectiveness in terms of blocking the virus is low, the ability of the vaccine to protect us against severe infection, against hospitalization will still be there, no? And I think it's important, no? Yung tinanong mo kanina na kung papasok dito, mild lang. Pero pag matamaan yan, yung mga 60 years old and above, yung mga frontline healthcare workers na always exposed to these patients, or especially mga immunocompromised, yung primary vaccine series mo talagang wala na siyang epekto na talaga. And that's why the emphasis now, and also with Professor Guido in most of this interview, is we encourage everyone to get the booster. It's important.
Mm-hmm. Well, pero Doc, ito rin kasi yung problema. We've been talking about the waning vaccine immunity or efficacy. Well, yung first booster shot, nasa 12.9 million pa rin tayo. And it's barely moving. Yes, it is moving upwards, but it's barely moving. And we're already going to the second boosters. So kahit yung first booster, malabo pa rin tayo. What are we looking at by the end of the year? If the trend continues at yung mga tao talagang makukulit pa rin, tayo pa rin magpa-booster, whether first or second, by the end of the year, wala na ba talagang bisa yung ating primary shots?
Ang data is the protection, especially for severe infection, is between like 7 to 8 months, no, from the time you got the primary vaccine series.
Okay,
but
for severe.
But with Omicron, what's the problem here is that you cannot prevent it from getting inside your body and get infected. So we have to deal with infection. We'll have to deal with people who are having symptoms because of the waning immunity, but they will still continue to be less to develop the severe infection. Ang ano ko lang dito, Ed, no, ang concern ko lang is really the vulnerable population.
Yeah.
And in fact, alam naman natin yan, in other countries who are experiencing Omicron, most of those that were admitted are also the vulnerable population.
Pero kung ayaw pa rin talaga netong mga tao magpa-booster, yun namang mga nagpa-booster na gusto ng second booster.
Actually,
are you discussing the possibility of sabay-sabay na lang yan? Para lang magamit pati yung mga vaccines. Kasi I know a lot of people na nakapag-booster na and they want to get their second booster kasi nakaka 4 months na daw sila and you have all these warnings nga about these variants coming in and waning immunity.
The problem with that, yung logistics din, no? At saka that's why we have to prioritize lang, no? Dahil maski bakunahan mo ang general population with the second booster, no? It's not an assurance because variant will always develop and that will be a cycle of booster and vaccine and booster and vaccine, no? So, i-prioritize natin yung population na kung magka-infection ka, maging severe ka, doon na lang natin i-focus ang protection, especially for the vulnerable population. And hopefully, no, we will wait for variant-specific vaccines. There are developments now that some of these pharmaceutical companies are already in the phase 2 and phase 3 of the Omicron variant-specific vaccines, which will be more protective compared to the first generation vaccines.
Doc, I think to Ami's point, I think what she's also trying to say is this, na unfortunately today or yesterday yata, we were forced to turn away some people who are not yet qualified to get a second booster shot, even though a lot of other people don't even want to get their first booster shot. So parang baka lang wasted opportunity ba and these are people who might not want to get boosted again if they've been turned away and they're willing to get boosted, unlike other people who parang kailangan mong bunutan ng ngipin.
Well, ang nakikita lang natin doon, there was a preemptive implementation, no? Kasi may mga ibang hospital. Linawin lang natin, no? The Philippine FDA approved the use of second booster for immunocompromised, 60 years old and above, and healthcare workers, no? And there are those now, nung actual process kasi nito, the final recommendation approval should be from HTAC, no? And HTAC, based on their data, based on their review, find that the immunocompromised should be the first one to receive the second booster. So hopefully, the second booster recommendation for the 60 years old and above and healthcare workers will follow. So siguro nagkalito lang, no, na akala nila ang Philippine FDA nagsabi na approve na itong tatlo, pero sa implementation, ang immunocompromised muna ang mauuna.
Mm-hmm. Prof. Guido, I'm wondering lang if, kasi you've been looking at the numbers and may konting increases, although konti pa lang. I'm wondering na if you're seeing already any trend or is it too early to look at that?
Well, Ed, actually today, DOH reported only 123 cases, so mababa siya. But of course, it's a Tuesday, so the Tuesday low. Syempre, we were coming off din the Holy Week, medyo reduced yung testing during the Holy Week because may mga laboratories na sarado. So there are factors na, na hindi pa natin possibly nakikita yung the real numbers, although the positivity rate is still down and the healthcare utilization still low, very low at this time. Wala pa tayong nakikita, but like I said, yung sa South Africa, it just happened suddenly. Ganun din sa India. So once cases start increasing, we'll definitely see that. Pero usually it comes without warning. I'm not sure if Dr. Salate is seeing something on the ground. Anecdotally, I'm hearing something, pero ayoko pang pangunahan. So I have to confirm the data that I'm hearing about. There are people who are concerned something might already be starting, but I haven't seen it in the data, so we're still waiting to grow within the next few days. By next week, we will see. This is also concerning because this is right in time for election.
Yeah, we're 2 weeks away.
2 weeks away. If we could hold it off sana until after the election, that will be better. Pero hindi naman natin to. We don't choose what's going to happen. If it happens, it happens. We'll just have to manage it somehow kahit na sumabay siya sa elections. Again, so far nothing yet in the data of the DOH, but anecdotally I'm hearing a few things, and I have to confirm that first dun sa data and on the ground. And we might know by next week if there's something going on. So far ngayon, wala pa naman.
Hindi ko malaman kung napapangiti si Dr.
How accurate is the data? Hindi ba? Madalas natin pag-usapan yan eh. And even before, you were already saying medyo magulo na you were starting to fly blind, no? Because people nga are not even reporting the results of their test. Pati yung mga antigen test na ginagamit, hindi registered sa FDA ngayon eh. So, how reliable is your data?
Well, it's fairly reliable because we have ways of checking it. So yung positivity rate, yung hospital utilization, we check that. We also check Google Trends as a backup. And then we check with some local governments. Pero yun nga, like I said, I'm actually hearing something na wala pa sa data. we will have to confirm this. Kasi if there's something that going on, it will show up din sa data one way or another. Maybe not now, maybe, but it could happen slightly delayed lang, but we'll see it definitely. So hindi naman tayo mahuhuli na todo-todo. Hindi naman yung tipong may surge na 1 week tapos hindi pa natin nakikita sa data. So it could be that something's just starting to happen. Possibly, again, I don't want to sound like we're speculating. I'm just being transparent na I'm hearing something from certain sources, pero so far sa data, we're not seeing anything yet.
Pero andito naman si Dr. Rontin eh.
Hospital. You think we're getting accurate data on the COVID situation based on your experience in San Lazaro, for example?
Well, sa Lazaro, hindi naman talaga kami na zero, no? And what we have now, most of those na nagka-COVID sa amin ngayon are those who are also immunocompromised, no? We cater a lot of this HIV population, and siguro for the past months, these are the people also who are admitted, and that's the concern now, because again, as I mentioned, even with a mild, less virulent Omicron, pag ang matamaan nito, ang immunocompromised, talagang mas severe sila. So we are experiencing that in our hospital na itong mga immunocompromised are really the ones that are admitted with severe COVID.
Dr. Jean, let me ask you na rin, total, binigyan rin ni Professor Guido are you hearing what he's hearing? Whatever it is that he's hearing.
I'm not so sure on yung ni Professor, but ang ano ko lang dito is yes, most likely, no? Kasi it's too early to say that we have concern now with regards to this number of cases, because so far for the past month, talagang hindi naman nag-increase ang bed occupancy, no, sa mga hospitals, no. But we'll have to monitor in the next few days.
Tapos,
Just to clarify to the viewers, Doctor, ano ba exactly yung mga immunocompromised? Kasi may mga kilala ko na may high blood lang, may hypertension, gusto nang magpa-second booster. Ano ba yung covered ng immunocompromised?
Okay, so the immunocompromised population that are included in this second booster, number one, those who have HIV, those who have active malignancy or cancer, those who are taking steroids, no, because of their condition, and then number four, those who are who underwent transplant, no, mga post-transplant recipients, and then yung mga bedridden na may mga tanning na mga 6 months or more than that na konti na lang, no, they're also at risk kasi pag na may na-expose sa bahay tapos uwi tapos they will be exposed, they can also get this infection even with the first booster. The data is telling us that even with the first booster, Ami, it's not enough to protect them. No, it's not enough. That's why you need a second booster for you to elevate that protection.
Doc, let me ask you about a study that they did in Israel dun sa kanilang second booster shot. Among other things that they found, ang laki ng drop-off ng efficacy ng second booster shot by the 8th week. By the 8th week, ang laki na binagsak, and by the 12th week, talagang malaki talaga binagsak. So you're looking at 2 months, and then I think the third month, ang laki na binabagsak. What does this mean? Does this mean that we will have to get boosters na every 3 months, every 4 months?
Thank you for that. No, what they are reporting is the neutralizing antibody, no, and the neutralizing antibody is the one that is measured there. Kaya yung nakita nila na pag bumabagsak ang neutralizing antibody mo, your risk of getting the infection will be higher, no? But what is not reported there, the ability of this vaccine, that it can have a longer protection against the severe infection. But in a country like Israel, no, they don't want to really risk those individuals getting the infection. Kaya their threshold for giving booster is really very low. Nakikita mo sila talaga nangunguna, first booster, second booster, and hopefully, no, I don't know if they will be giving the third booster.
Last na lang, Doc, yung recommendation niya for the second booster, yung heterologous o yung homologous?
Yes, Ami, the ganito yan, no? For anybody who is using a sign or who has been given a Sinovac, he has to get the heterologous, no? Either an Astra or Pfizer or Moderna. But for anybody who has received either a Moderna, a Pfizer, or an Astra, it's okay to get the homologous, and it's also okay to get the heterologous.
Okay.
Doc, before I let you go, one last squeeze-in question. So what does this mean for us, for everybody, in the long term? Will we need to get booster shots every so many months, forever and ever? Or will there come a point where we can just say na, may sipon lang ako na COVID ang tawag?
Well, maging ganun siguro yan, Ed, no? And I think ang pinaka-priority ngayon is we will be having a vaccine that is really specific for the variant, no? Kagaya ng influenza, no? Yung influenza vaccine is really patterned to the strain of influenza that is common in a country. So ang mangyayari niyan, kung COVID will still be here after so many months, then it's important what variant is that, and the vaccine should target that particular variant para very specific ang protection.
In which case, hindi na kailangan ng boosters every so many months, if that is the case.
That depende. Kung halimbawa, every year, mag-iba-iba ang variant and nandito pa rin sa bansa, no? Meron pa rin ongoing transmission, then that will be something na maging every year.
O kaya treatment na lang, di ba? Yun yung another option na tuwing i-treat na lang. Kung meron ganun.
Well, the treatment is also a promising area of the infection, because we have now very good and highly effective antivirals, and there are also in the pipelines that are really important. No? Ang problema lang sa treatment, they're so expensive because they're done they are formulated abroad, no? So talagang mahirap mag-formulate ng mga generic form on those treatment.
Yung Okta gagawa ng si Father Nick.
Si Father Nick, nakakalasing pa.
Si Father Nick nasasagot nun since wala siya. He's traveling.
Okay, gentlemen, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. Professor Guido David and Dr. Ronjin Solante, thank you so much at ingat po parate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed and Ami.
That'll be all for this edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Now, before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and we are One News.
Palit, Mike, hindi na. Yan na.